From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In the NoCo. I'm Brad Turner, in today for Aaron O'Toole. An artist in Lakewood who specializes in creating tiny books and illustrations got an unusual offer recently. An art gallery reached out to Evan Lorenzen and asked for his help in creating a book of original art, no bigger than your thumbnail, to be placed on the moon.
At first, reading that email, I just didn't even believe that it was really a possibility. I stepped away for a little bit and came back to it and realized that this was actually legitimate.
The Moon Gallery works to send cultural artifacts into space. They've shipped artwork to the International Space Station, and now they wanted to focus on the moon. Evan worked with the Moon Gallery to compile a tiny 80-page book filled with images and poetry by dozens of artists and writers.
I actually had to end up using some magnifying glasses just to make sure all the text was looking accurate.
They called the book Moonbound, and it's set to be launched into space later this year. Evan joined me to talk about the challenge of making the tiny book and why it had to be no larger than 1 cubic centimeter.
Space art needs to be small because of the amount of effort it requires to get it into space. We don't have the extra space and weight and availability to play around with doing really large-scale things. In fact, when developing the prototype, I was over by 0.14 millimeters, and that was too large. So we really have to take every single micro millimeter into consideration for a project like this.
Wow, very precise. And what kinds of places does your tiny art end up when it's not going to the moon?
Most pieces actually end up in collectors' homes. I do a lot of miniature pet portraits for people and also produce some of my own miniature books.
So where on the moon will this book end up? Will it sit on the lunar surface or in some sort of container?
So it is going to actually be encapsulated in a resin pyramid with some other objects as well. And this will be mounted on a lunar rover that will be taking various samples and data across the surface.
Does it stay on the moon after the astronauts leave?
As far as I know, and there's certain things that I'm in the know about at this point, but as far as I can tell, this is going to be a permanent installation up there.
Wow. So the moon is a totally different environment than the Earth's atmosphere. How do you make artwork that will survive in that environment?
The most important thing for me is making sure to get materials that are going to be durable in the long run. So the type of ink that we ended up using for this project is estimated to be archival at 200 to 400 years. So hopefully that will actually hold up. But once again, it's one of those things where I've never made something going off planet. So it has been a lot of research just trying to find the right combination of tools that exist here on Earth.
Your job was to find the right materials, print the pages with art from dozens of artists and writers, and then bind the book. I'm curious, how do you print pages for a book that's a centimeter wide?
That was the biggest challenge of it all, was figuring out what the right printing technique is going to be. So trying to figure out how we were going to get multiple lines of text on every page, where each page is under 8 millimeters tall, was definitely a challenge. And eventually what I found was a type of archival photo printer that actually gave us the precision to be able to print up to 5,760 dots per inch.
Very precise.
Absolutely.
Wow. Help me picture what kind of art you helped send to the moon. What's a particularly beautiful page of art in the book?
What I love about the book is that it is such a wide range of different types of information visually. So about half the book is written, including, various languages like Arabic and Russian, and then half of the book is visual. For me, actually, one of the most interesting pieces was from our editor, Barbara Brownie, who put together basically a visual symbolic guide of how the moon should think about viewing the Earth.
Tell me more. What does that look like?
In this case, she came up with her own visual symbolic language. And so really it almost just looks like a alien set of calligraphy of various symbols. when you read it in conjunction with her piece of writing, you see the extra layer of depth to her information there.
What other kinds of images are in the book?
So for myself, I contributed an image of an illustration I had just seemingly done years prior that happened to fit in perfectly. That was a miniature illustration of a personified moon kind of watching a rocket ship lift off from Earth and being very engaged and curious about it. Other imagery included some beautiful photography. We had some digital imagery. It really was a really wide range of interpretations of how people think about how the moon views the Earth.
I know it's hard to distill the work of many writers who turned in pieces for this book into, one takeaway, but how did the writers approach writing about the moon for this book?
It was such a wide variety, some so poetic, some more scientific. It really was a great cross-section of humanity. Ultimately, I think it's all about curiosity, though, and the fact that we have the technology and options to be able to participate in fascinating experiments like this. It really is just a testament to how curious humans are and how we do want to leave a mark on the world and beyond our world.
Again, the book is called Moonbound. It has art and writing from artists from around the world. How do you imagine people will interact with Moonbound in the future?
I don't know how long the book will be up there before somebody reads it again. But what I think is really interesting is that we also made a copy to stay here on Earth. And so I think that's a really interesting aspect.
So there's a copy of the book that stayed on Earth, so people who don't go to the moon can still see it. Where can we see it?
And that is a good question. We are in the midst of figuring that out right now. And if we want to potentially make a edition of the book so people can, have their own physical copy is another thing that we might be considering. And so right now, the biggest thing was just to get the book made, to get the process rolling for getting it on the way to the moon.
Evan, why do you think it's worthwhile to get art on the moon?
Well, on Moon Gallery's website, they have a phrase that really sticks with me. They call it basically democratizing access to space. I think it's important for us to be putting art on the moon because so much of our interaction with the moon is based in science and technology. But humans are more than just scientific beings. And so we need to be able to share those other aspects of human culture. And I think that a book encapsulates that in a really beautiful way because it is such an old form of sharing information that is physical and that really engages the viewer and requires an intimate relationship.
Evan Lorenzen is an artist based in Lakewood who assembled Moonbound, a tiny book of art and writing that will be sent to the moon later this year. We'll put a link to more on this unusual project in our show notes and at kunc.org. That's it today for In the NoCo. I'm Brad Turner. Thanks for listening.